20 years ago, the man I loved looked me in the eye and told me I'd never be anything more than a failure. He laughed at my dreams, rejected our unborn child, and disappeared from our lives like we were nothing. Today, I watched from my office as that same child, now a 19-year-old tech prodigy, worth mentioning in the same breath as the greatest minds of our generation, stood before the world's media and announced our company's complete acquisition of his crumbling empire. But here's the twist he never saw coming. He spent the last 6 months thinking he was mentoring his brilliant new protege, never realizing he was training his own daughter to dismantle everything he built. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of real-life karma that Hollywood wishes it could write. I promise you, if you stay until the very end, you'll witness the most satisfying moment of poetic justice you've ever heard. Trust me on this. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Violet Chen, and as I sit here in my penthouse, overlooking the glittering skyline of San Francisco, it's hard to believe that 2 decades ago, I was standing in a food bank line, 7 months pregnant, with exactly $34 to my name. The view from my window now shows the headquarters of Meridian Solutions, the artificial intelligence company I built from nothing, valued at just over $18 billion. Tomorrow morning, that number will jump significantly when we officially announce the Callaway Enterprises acquisition. But tonight, I need to tell you how we got here, because this story isn't just about money or revenge. It's about something far more powerful. I was 24 years old when I met Derek Callaway. I was a junior software engineer at a mid-sized tech firm, the kind of place where you worked 70-hour weeks for mediocre pay and the promise of equity that would probably never materialize. But I didn't care about any of that. I was in love with code, with algorithms, with the beautiful logic of making machines think. Every night after work, I'd go home to my cramped studio apartment and work on my own projects, my own dreams. I was developing an artificial intelligence algorithm that could recognize patterns in data that humans couldn't see. Patterns that could predict everything from disease outbreaks to market crashes. Derek was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was the son of real estate mogul Harrison Callaway, heir to a fortune built on commercial properties across the western United States. He was handsome, charming, and when he walked into a room, people noticed. We met at a tech industry mixer, one of those networking events I usually avoided because I felt so out of place. But that night, something made me stay. He approached me at the bar, asked me what I did, and when I started talking about my AI project, his eyes lit up, or at least I thought they did. For 6 months, we were inseparable. He'd pick me up after work in his Tesla, take me to restaurants I couldn't pronounce the names of, introduce me to people whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small countries. And every time, he'd tell them about my project, about how brilliant I was, about how I was going to change the world. I fell in love with him, yes, but more than that, I fell in love with the version of myself I saw reflected in his eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but when I saw those 2 pink lines, something shifted inside me. I was terrified, absolutely paralyzed with fear. But underneath that fear was something else, a fierce, protective love that I'd never experienced before. I spent 3 days working up the courage to tell Derek, rehearsing the words in my mirror, imagining how we'd figure it out together. I remember every detail of that night. We were in his apartment, the expensive one in Pacific Heights, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that cost more than I made in a year. I told him I needed to talk about something important. He muted the basketball game he was watching and turned to me with that easy smile I'd fallen for. I took a deep breath and told him I was pregnant. The smile disappeared so fast, it was like watching a door slam shut. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Then he laughed. Not a happy laugh, not a nervous laugh, but a cruel, cutting laugh that I can still hear in my nightmares. "You're joking, right?" he said. "Please tell me you're joking." I shook my head, my hands trembling. Derek, I know this is unexpected, but we can figure this out. We can… Figure what out, Violet? He stood up, pacing away from me like I was contagious. You want to keep it? You want to have a baby? Do you have any idea how insane that is? You're barely scraping by as it is. You think you can raise a kid in that shoebox you call an apartment? We could do it together, I whispered. I love you. I thought you loved me. The look he gave me then was something I'll never forget. It was like he was seeing me for the first time, and what he saw disgusted him. Love you, Violet. Be realistic. You're a junior engineer who spends her free time on a project that'll never go anywhere. You're a nobody from nowhere. I was slumming it, having fun. You seriously thought this was going to be forever? Each word was a knife. But he wasn't done. And this dream of yours, this AI company you're always talking about, he actually laughed again. You think you're going to be a CEO? You think you're going to build some empire? You'll be lucky if you can keep your current job. You're delusional. And now you want to trap me with a baby. My family would bury you in legal fees before you could even file for child support. I was crying now, not even trying to hide it. I'm not trying to trap you, I just thought. You thought wrong. He pulled out his wallet, threw a stack of bills on the coffee table. There's $5,000. Get rid of it. We never have to talk about this again. I can't do that, I said. This is our child. It's not a child. It's a problem, and it's your problem, not mine. He walked to his door and opened it. I think you should leave. Actually, I think you should leave and never contact me again. If you try to come after me or my family, I have lawyers who will make your life hell. Do you understand me? I grabbed my purse and walked out in a daze. Behind me, I heard the door close with a final terrible click. That was the last time I saw Derek Calloway in person for 20 years. The next month was a blur of devastation. Derek blocked my number, blocked me on every social media platform, and apparently told his family some version of events, because 2 weeks after our conversation, I received a letter from Calloway family attorneys. It was brief and brutal. Cease all contact with Derek Calloway or face legal action for harassment. There was no mention of the pregnancy, no acknowledgement of anything personal. I was being erased. Then I lost my job. The official reason was performance issues, but I knew the truth. The Calloway family had invested in my company's parent corporation. One phone call from Harrison Calloway, and I was gone. When I tried to find work at other tech firms in the area, I hit wall after wall. I'd been blacklisted. By my 7th month of pregnancy, I was working 3 jobs. I waitressed at a diner during breakfast and lunch shifts, coded freelance projects under a pseudonym during Nadia's nap times, and worked the night shift at a 24-hour convenience store. I lived in a studio apartment in the worst part of Oakland, where gunshots were common and the building's heat barely worked. I remember being so exhausted that I'd sometimes fall asleep, standing up at the convenience store counter. The absolute lowest point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was standing in line at a food bank, my pregnant belly huge, under my thin jacket, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. I felt the weight of every choice I'd made, every dream I'd had, crushing down on me. For a moment, just a brief, terrible moment, I wondered if Derek had been right. Maybe I was nobody. Maybe I'd never be anything more. But then I felt her kick. My daughter, moving inside me, reminding me she was real, she was coming, she was counting on me. And something crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about Derek anymore. This wasn't about proving him wrong or making him sorry. This was about survival. This was about building a life for my daughter that would be so far beyond anything Derek could imagine that his opinion would become irrelevant. Nadia was born on a rainy October morning, and the moment they placed her in my arms, I felt the universe shift. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, dark hair, eyes that seemed to look right through me to something deeper. I made her a promise that day. I would give her everything. Not everything money could buy, but everything that mattered. Love, stability, opportunity, and the knowledge that she could become anything she wanted. The next 3 years were brutal. I coded while Nadia slept, worked my jobs while she was in affordable daycare, survived on 4 hours of sleep a night. But I finished my algorithm. I built my AI system. And I started reaching out to companies, offering them something revolutionary, a pattern recognition system that could predict market trends, identify security threats, optimize logistics chains, anything involving complex data analysis. The first year I made $40,000. The second year, $200,000. By the third year, I had incorporated Meridian Solutions and landed a contract with a pharmaceutical company that used my AI to predict dangerous drug interactions before they happened. That contract was worth $8 million. We were no longer just surviving, we were building. The growth was exponential after that. Healthcare companies, financial institutions, logistics corporations, everyone needed what I'd built. By the time Nadia was 10, Meridian Solutions had gone public, and I was a billionaire. By the time she was 15, we were the industry standard for predictive AI systems. And through it all, I stayed hidden. No photos, no interviews, no public appearances. I operated through spokespeople and press releases. Let them wonder who Violet Chen was. Let them speculate. I had more important things to do, like raising my daughter. Nadia inherited my mind for numbers and patterns. But she had something else too. A fierce determination, a brilliant creativity, and a warmth that I'd somehow managed to preserve, despite everything we'd been through. She never knew poverty because I made sure of that, but she knew hard work. She knew the value of education. She knew that her mother had built something from nothing. By 16, she was contributing to Meridian's quantum computing division. By 18, she'd developed her own neural network architecture that made our existing systems look primitive. And then she came to me with an idea that would change everything. "Mom," she said one evening, sitting across from me in our home office, "I know who my father is." My blood went cold. I'd always planned to tell her, but I'd been waiting for the right time. "Nadia, it's okay. I've known for a couple years. I'm not upset with you." She pulled out her laptop. "But I've been researching him. Derek Callaway, Callaway Enterprises. And Mom, his company is failing. They're overextended, drowning in debt, making bad decisions. Their data center infrastructure is outdated and hemorrhaging money." I didn't know where she was going with this, but I could see the wheels turning in her brilliant mind. "We need data centers for Phase 4 of Meridian," she continued. "And I think we should acquire Callaway Enterprises. But here's my idea. What if I went to work for him first?" "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "Nadia, you don't understand what kind of man he is." "I understand exactly what kind of man he is. He's the kind who'll be impressed by a brilliant young intern and never think to ask the right questions. I'll use Mom's maiden name, Nadia Brighton. He'll never connect me to you. And over 6 months, I'll learn everything about his company from the inside, while we position ourselves for the takeover." She leaned forward. "Mom, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because it's a smart business move. But if there happens to be some poetic justice involved, I won't complain." Against every maternal instinct, I agreed. And my daughter, my brilliant calculating daughter, became an intern at Callaway Enterprises under a false name. For 6 months, I watched through her eyes as she worked alongside the man who'd abandoned us. She'd come home and tell me stories that made my blood boil. How charming he was to young female employees. How he took credit for other people's work. How he'd lecture her about business while making decisions that were slowly destroying his own company. And the worst part, he loved her. Not as a daughter, he had no idea. But as a protégé, he saw her brilliance and claimed it as validation of his own mentoring. "You remind me of myself at your age," he told her once. She came home and cried that night. And I held her and reminded her why we were doing this. Meanwhile, Meridian was quietly buying up Callaway Enterprises stock through shell companies. We approached his board with a partnership proposal. His company was desperate enough that they pressured him to accept. Derek thought he was getting acquired by some faceless corporation while maintaining control. He had no idea that Meridian Solutions was my company. He'd never bothered to research who'd built it. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday. Derek arrived at Meridian's headquarters, expecting to be the star of the show, the face of a merger he believed he controlled. I watched from my private office via video feed as he strutted through our lobby, shaking hands, flashing that smile I'd once fallen for. Nadia was already backstage. We'd talked the night before, held each other, made sure we were both ready for this. "You don't have to do this," I'd told her. "We can announce it through a spokesperson." "No," she'd said firmly. "I want him to hear it from me. I want him to understand what he threw away." The auditorium filled with journalists, industry analysts, Meridian employees, and Callaway Enterprises board members. Derek took a seat in the front row, looking confused about why he wasn't the one at the podium. Then Nadia walked out. She looked so poised, so professional in her navy suit, her dark hair pulled back. Derek glanced at her with mild interest, just another corporate spokesperson to him. He had no idea he was looking at his daughter. "Good morning," Nadia began, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for coming. I'm Nadia Chen, Chief Innovation Officer of Meridian Solutions, and I'm here to clarify some misconceptions about today's announcement." I saw Derek's brow furrow slightly at the name Chen, but he still didn't connect it. "Over the past 6 months," Nadia continued, "Meridian Solutions has acquired 68% of Callaway Enterprises through strategic stock purchases and agreements with the board of directors. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Callaway Enterprises is officially a subsidiary of Meridian Solutions. All executive decisions will now flow through our leadership team." The room erupted in murmurs. Derek half stood from his seat, his face reddening. "What? That's not what we agreed to. I was told this was a partnership that I'd maintain." "Mr. Callaway," Nadia said calmly, cutting him off, "you were told what you needed to hear to get board approval. But let me share something personal that makes this acquisition particularly meaningful to me and to Meridian's founder and CEO." She had his full attention now. The room had gone completely silent. 20 years ago, a man told a young woman that she'd never amount to anything. He mocked her dreams of building a tech company. He called her a nobody from nowhere. When she told him she was pregnant, he threw money at her and told her to get rid of the problem. He abandoned her, had his family blacklist her in the industry, and erased her from his life like she never existed. Derek's face had gone from red to white. I could see his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. That woman was Violet Chen, my mother, founder and CEO of Meridian Solutions, the company that now owns yours. And I am Nadia Chen, the problem you paid her to eliminate, the child you denied, the daughter you never wanted. She paused, letting it sink in. "For the past 6 months, I've worked as an intern at Callaway Enterprises under my maternal grandmother's maiden name. You mentored me, Mr. Callaway. You told me I reminded you of yourself. You even said I was like the daughter you never had." The irony hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Well, I am the daughter you never had, because you chose not to have me. You chose not to know me. And now you work for us." Derek tried to stand, tried to speak, but Nadia wasn't finished. "This wasn't revenge, Mr. Callaway. This was business. Meridian needed data center infrastructure, and your company was failing. We saw an opportunity and we took it. But I won't lie and say there isn't a certain poetry to this moment. You told my mother she'd never be a CEO. She built an $18 billion company. You said I was a problem to be eliminated. I'm now the youngest chief innovation officer in Silicon Valley. Your biggest mistake wasn't abandoning us. It was underestimating us." Security was already moving toward Derek as he finally found his voice, shouting something incoherent. Cameras flashed, journalists shouted questions, and Nadia simply stepped away from the podium, walked off stage, and came directly to my office. When she entered, I stood and wrapped my arms around her. She was shaking slightly, the adrenaline finally hitting her. "Did I do okay?" she whispered. "You were perfect," I told her. "You were absolutely perfect." That was 3 weeks ago. The story went viral, of course. Hashtags trended. Think pieces were written about karma, about corporate warfare, about mother-daughter dynasties. Derek Calloway became a cautionary tale, a meme, a punchline. He tried to fight the acquisition legally, but his own board sided with us. The last I heard, he'd resigned and moved to Europe, trying to escape the humiliation. But here's what matters more than any of that. Meridian Solutions stock jumped 37% after the announcement. Nadia's neural network architecture is being implemented across every sector of our expanded company. And last week, we endowed a $50 million scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing careers in STEM fields. I never wanted revenge. I never set out to destroy Derek Calloway. But I did set out to build something so undeniable, so powerful, that his opinion of me would become irrelevant. And in the process, I raised a daughter who understands that the best response to being underestimated isn't anger, it's achievement. Sometimes at night, I still think about that girl standing in the food bank line, wondering if she'd made the right choices. I wish I could go back and tell her what I know now, that the people who mock your dreams are usually the ones afraid you'll achieve them. That being underestimated is sometimes the greatest gift because it means nobody sees you coming. And that the child someone calls a problem might just grow up to be the one who outshines them all. Derek Calloway mocked my dreams 20 years ago. Today, those dreams didn't just come true, they swallowed his empire whole. And the daughter he denied is the one who made it happen. If this story moved you, I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more incredible stories of karma and justice. And most importantly, drop a comment below telling me about a time someone doubted you. Did you prove them wrong? Are you still working on it? I want to hear your story. Remember this, your doubters don't write your ending. You do. Every single day, you're writing it with your choices, your perseverance, your refusal to let anyone else define your worth. Derek thought he could erase us from his story, but he forgot something important. We were writing our own. Thank you for listening. Now go out there and build something so extraordinary that the people who doubted you become footnotes in your success story.